Hey, what's up? Technologics here, and today we're looking at the iPod Touch 6th generation. Should you buy it in 2017? First off, let me start by saying that I used the iPod 6th generation as my main driver up until November of last year when I got an iPhone 6. So trust me in that I do know what I'm talking about here. But without further ado, let's get right into this. The iPod 6th generation was released mid-2015 fairly quietly and replaced the aging iPod 5th generation that had been around since 2012. However, it is nearly identical to the iPod 5, at least on the outside. The body and design are the same, except for a couple exceptions. The wrist strap on the back of the iPod 5 is missing on the 6, and the 6 comes in different colors than the 5. You can get it in blue, gold, pink, space gray, and silver. There's also a red one that you can get directly through Apple's website. When it comes to the design, although it's a relatively old one, back from 2012, it looks great. I love it. It has an aluminum enclosure that gives the entire device a very sleek, modern feel. If you look at the home button, which lacks Touch ID by the way, which is definitely a drawback, it has that classic square thing on it, and it's colored gold instead of black. Well, I don't think Apple does this for all of the iPod colors, they do for gold, and it just goes to show you how much thought and time Apple put into making these things look beautiful. The iPod is thin, and when I say thin, I mean like ridiculously thin. It's thinner than the iPhone 6, 6S, and 7, believe it or not, and it's light. Like really light. It weighs in at 3.1 ounces, which is honestly crazy. Holding it beside my iPhone 6, there's a huge difference. It feels amazing in my hand, like almost like nothing. Like it barely feels like you're holding anything. That won't necessarily appeal to everybody, but to me for sure it's a good thing. This means you can put a case on it without it being too bulky, a problem that often plagues smartphones, for me at least. I hate big cases, but I want my device to be protected. So that's definitely a bonus when it comes to the iPod. Form factor was definitely done right. You might be asking what the difference between an iPod and an iPhone is. Well, it's fairly simple. Imagine an iPhone without the ability to be a phone. Bam! You got an iPod. So it gets apps, games, whatever, but it can't hold a SIM card. You can text other iPhones over Wi-Fi with iMessage and contact people with, say, I don't know, Facebook Messenger or something, but you need Wi-Fi to be able to do those things. So if you need to be in contact with people at all times, don't get the iPod. Of course, a benefit to having this over a phone is that you don't need to pay for a plan. So let's go over the internals now, which is where the iPod shows the most differences between it and the iPod 5. It holds the same A8 processor found in the iPhone 6 as well as a gig of RAM. This is opposed to the A5 processor in the iPod 5, which is the same as the iPhone 4S, so outdated. The A5 processor isn't very good anymore with the 4S and also the iPod 5 not being able to run iOS 10. So they're both definitely outdated, and the A8 processor was a really good upgrade. The iPod 6 will be able to handle pretty much anything you throw at it, and it's certainly not obsolete, and it shouldn't be for at least a couple years. It's about as fast as the iPhone 6 in nearly every aspect. When I switched over, I didn't really notice a speed difference at all, to be honest. The iPod is very small. There's no getting around that. It's 4 inches, meaning that it's about the same size as the iPhone 5, 5C, and 5S. For me, it's not quite big enough. I much prefer the size of the iPhone 6. However, many people don't mind the smaller size or even prefer it, and if you fall under that category, then no worries. The screen, besides the size, is actually really nice, as it has a Retina display with a decent resolution of 640 by 1136. Nothing mind-blowing and not quite 720p, but everything on the screen will look crisp and clear, so no complaints there. The camera in the iPod 6 is not great, with 8 megapixels and 1080p video. So it sounds alright, but it really isn't anything special, and you can see that on the screen here. The camera is meh, which is probably good enough for most people anyways. Outside and good lighting, you'll probably get some nice shots, but inside, darker lighting, you're gonna find that it gets pretty grainy. I definitely wouldn't recommend buying this solely for the camera. There are multiple storage variations with 16, 32, 64, and 128 gigabytes. I would recommend going for at least the 32, as the 16 fills up very quickly, especially if you are taking pictures or you're downloading apps and stuff like that. It's not a lot of space. The battery isn't great from what I've seen, and it often needs to be charged during the day when I use it a lot. If you don't do a lot, it will be okay, but if you use it frequently, you might need to keep a charger close by. I used to have it jailbroken, and after restoring it, I found the life much better, but each device will vary. The iPod 6 is best suited for someone who doesn't need a phone, or maybe needs a device to hold their music. Huh, an iPod holding music. The idea sounds a little silly, but it is an option. In all seriousness, there aren't many downfalls to the iPod 6th generation, and so yes, it is worth buying in 2017. I hope this helped you out, and if it did at all, please like this video as well as subscribe for more content just like this. If you aren't happy with what I said, I suppose you could dislike, but you are a mean person. Just remember that. Comment what you think about the iPod down below. Do you agree with me, disagree? Let me know. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.